What's up, Falcons Nation? It's your boy Jew coming at you with another Atlanta Falcons video. As always, Falcons Nation, rise up. In today's video, I want to give you guys some quick Atlanta Falcons news, and I also want to talk about the Atlanta Falcons' first training camp padded practice today. But if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you'll know when I've done Atlanta Falcons content. Hit that like button for your boy. I really appreciate each and every one of you guys for continuing to tune into the channel. If you would like to follow your boy on Twitter, you can follow me at Jew Talk Sports. You also can follow me on at Instagram or on Instagram at Jew Talk Sports. If you would like to donate to my channel, you can donate to my Cash App, which is the $ Jew Talk Sports. But I really appreciate you guys continuing to share out my content. We are on the road to 2,000 subscribers. But with that being said, let's jump right into the video. So first off, in Atlanta Falcons news, today, Sterling Hoffrechter, starting punter for the Atlanta Falcons last season, was waived or cut today by our Atlanta Falcons due to him being injured. Arthur Smith had a press conference today after training camp practice, and he basically stated that Sterling Hoffrechter has been injured. He hasn't been able to participate in training camp, and we're getting ready for our first preseason game next week against the Tennessee Titans, and we need a guy that can come in and compete and can punt the ball. So we did sign a punter today, Cameron Nazalet. He's actually a punter out of the University of Georgia. I don't know a whole lot about him. Haven't had a chance to watch any tape on him. But from what I'm hearing, he is a pretty good punter. I think Sterling Hoffrechter was an average punter last season for our Falcons. I thought he was going to be a lot better coming out of Syracuse when we drafted him, I believe, in the 6th round last year. But I was disappointed in Sterling Hoffrechter's distance on his punts last season. He didn't do a good job last season of pinning teams inside their own 10 or 20-yard line last season. Sterling Hoffrechter was a guy that was just an average punter in the league last season. And I definitely think Arthur Smith and the Atlanta Falcons did a great job, or did the right thing with moving on from Sterling Hoffrechter, especially because of the injuries that he's battling. We definitely have to bring in guys that can come in and compete. I wouldn't be surprised if the Falcons bring in another punter to compete with Nazalet, Cameron Nazalet. I wouldn't be surprised if the Falcons bring in another guy to compete with him during preseason. But we're going to see a lot of camp bodies coming in and out. As long as the roster, we have this 90-man roster in training camp, I think we're going to see guys coming in and out, especially on the special team side of things. But I am looking forward to seeing what Cameron Nazalet can do, see how well he can punt in the first preseason game against the Tennessee Titans. But with that being said, that's pretty much all I had for Atlanta Falcons news. Now, I also want to talk about today's training camp practice, which was the first padded practice for our Atlanta Falcons. I did get a chance to see some highlights from today's practice, and the guy that stood out in today's padded practice was Kyle Pitts, the first round draft pick for our Atlanta Falcons, the number 4 overall pick in the draft. Today he showed why he's a beast. He showed why he's one of those guys that's going to definitely be a playmaker as soon as he steps out on the field in week 1. Today he had a nice circus catch on a post route where Matt Ryan threw the ball to him up the seam, and I believe it was Fabian Monroe that batted the ball, but Kyle Pitts stayed with the play. He showed great hand-eye coordination with a circus catch, and they've been showing a highlight on Twitter and on YouTube. You can pull it up, but I do believe that Kyle Pitts was the highlight of the day. He was the guy that stood out today in today's training camp padded practice. He looked really good out there running routes. For what I've seen, it looked like Kyle Pitts definitely dominated the competition. He definitely looked like a man amongst boys, and I'm expecting huge things from Kyle Pitts this upcoming season. I am aware that we did lose Julio Jones, but I believe that Kyle Pitts is going to be a guy that's going to step right in and be a big playmaker for this Atlanta Falcons team this season. Not only playing the tight end position, but also being able to line up outside like a wide receiver. They're going to use him a lot in motion. And him and Hayden Hurst, as I mentioned in my video yesterday, I really think that Hayden Hurst and Kyle Pitts are going to have a huge role in this offense with Arthur Smith. He loves running 12 personnel with 2 tight ends on the field. So I definitely think this season is going to be huge for both Hayden Hurst and Kyle Pitts. I really expect those guys to be the focal point of this offense. But Kyle Pitts definitely, to me, was the guy that stood out when I looked at the highlights from training camp today. Also in training camp today, Frank Darby, Tarjay Sharp, and Lamade Zaccheaus. Those guys also made some nice catches today. Frank Darby had a nice catch over Chris Williamson, who's one of the cornerbacks that's out there competing for a position in training camp. Frank Darby had a great one-on-one matchup against Williamson, and he made a nice catch down the field on like a streak pattern. So Frank Darby did show today that he does have the big play ability. He's another guy that I've been watching in training camp, and I definitely expect him to be a guy that's going to shock a lot of people. When I told you guys originally when we drafted Frank Darby that one of the things that I noticed right away with Frank Darby when you go look at his highlights when he was in college is he's a guy that does a great job of adjusting to the football, and he's great at catching the ball in traffic. And if you go back and watch today's training camp practice, if you go back and watch the highlights, they show basically the guy was pretty much draped all over Frank Darby, and he was able to adjust to the football. It basically was just a simple streak pattern. He was able to adjust to the football and able to catch the ball over Chris Williamson. So he's another guy that's really stepping up and showing what he can do out there in training camp. Tarjay Sharp had a nice route where it was just like a quick comeback route, and he was able to create separation in a one-on-one matchup with one of the corners on our team. So he had a pretty good practice today as well. And then another wide receiver that I've really been watching in training camp and who's had a really good camp so far is Lamade Zaccheaus. He's another guy that's really stepping up in camp. He's been a guy that they've been using in screenplays. They've been using him a lot in the slot from what I've seen from the highlights during training camp. But he's a guy who can line up outside, inside. When he was at the University of Virginia, not only was he their top wide receiver, but he was also a guy that returned punts and played special teams. So I expect Lamade Zaccheaus to be one of those guys that takes the next step this year. I believe this is his 3rd year in the league, and I definitely expect him to take the next step. Last year, he did get injured halfway through the season, but I expect him to be a guy that's also going to be able to step up for our Atlanta Falcons this year, possibly be that number 3 wide receiver, but he's going to have to compete with Tarjay Sharp, and he's going to have to compete with Frank Darby. Those guys are not going to lay down, and it looks like we have a really good matchup or a really good competition out there going with those 3 guys, Lamade Zaccheaus, Frank Darby, and Tarjay Sharp. Also in training camp today, a lot of mixing and matching on the defensive side of the ball. Outside, as far as the outside linebackers and the defensive linemen, they've been using John Kaminsky all over the defensive line, but mainly he's been lining up on the inside. Him and Taquan Graham got a lot of time playing that 3 technique position. They have Stephen Means and Jacob Tuioti-Mariner. Those guys are getting majority of the snaps as the outside linebackers, where they're in that 2-point stance in the 3-4 setting. When we're running a 3-4 base set, those guys have been the guys that's been used as the outside linebackers due to Dante Fowler still being on the PUP list. It looks like Jacob Tuioti-Mariner and Stephen Means have been taking a lot of the reps with the 1 or the first team. So it looks like those 2 guys, when the first preseason game kicks off, possibly will be the guys that could be getting the starting roles starting off this preseason. But I'm definitely keeping, my eyes peeled, and I'm really excited so far about training camp. Matt Ryan has looked really sharp out there in training camp. He threw that ball on a dime to Kyle Pitts when he was able to make that circus catch on the post route. I've been watching a lot of these running backs as well that are competing. Mike Davis had a great one-on-one wheel route matchup against Afoye Oluokun, where he was able to make a nice catch against Afoye Oluokun. Afoye had great position, but Mike Davis showed really strong hands to be able to pull down the catch on a wheel route. So I think a lot of these guys are, showing, great upside. Mike Davis, Afoye Oluokun looks like he's continuing to improve and definitely could be one of those guys that could be a Pro Bowler this year. But I'm really impressed from what I'm seeing out of this training camp. I'm really impressed with Arthur Smith and his coaching staff. It looks like they're doing a good job of mixing and matching guys on the offensive line. Drew Dalman actually got out there today and was able to play a little bit of guard because they have Hennessy lined up at the center position. So they were using Drew Dalman at the guard position and also using Josh Andrews at that guard position. But Arthur Smith talked about after the practice, Arthur Smith talked about in his press conference being able to mix and match guys on the offensive line so those guys can build chemistry. He talked about allowing guys to gel because, during the season, there's going to be games where players may get injured or get banged up, and you're going to have to turn to guys like Drew Dalman, who will possibly be able to play guard and play center. You may have to turn to a guy like Jalen Mayfield to play guard or play right tackle. You may have to turn to a guy like Josh Andrews. And we know that firsthand with being Atlanta Falcons fans, where we've dealt with injuries the last couple seasons, not only on the offensive line, but we've dealt with injuries the last 3 seasons all up and down our roster. So it's very important to have depth on your team. And it's very important that you give these guys, scouted looks at practice. You give these guys snaps at practice. So when they're called upon for next man up, they're ready to go and they've had snaps with the starters and they're used to the game, the game speed. They're used to the different calls and they're used to different audible calls and all of that. So they're comfortable with, joining the first team or being able to come right in off the sideline and being able to step right in and be that next man up. So I think they're doing a good job of not just relying on the first team guys, but mixing and matching the first team guys with some of the second and third team guys. So these guys will be prepared if an injury happens. So I'm really impressed so far with the practice today. Very impressed with this coaching staff and these players and the way that they're going out and competing. I love the way that Arthur Smith is holding these guys accountable. And I definitely think that this Atlanta Falcons team, even though they're a young team, I do think that this team is going to be a lot better than last year because they have a better coaching staff here that's going to put these guys in positions to succeed. And I'm really excited to see next week the first preseason game against the Tennessee Titans, to see these guys go out and compete against another team and for these young guys to get out on the field and prove what they can do. Because there's been a lot of young guys that I'm not familiar with that have been standing out in camp. Chris Williamson was a name that Arthur Smith threw out yesterday in practice, that he's a guy that has really had a pretty good training camp so far. He's not a player that I'm too familiar with at the cornerback position, but I'm very interested to see what he can do in the preseason game. And I'm really excited to see what guys like Frank Darby, guys like Tajay Sharp, guys like Javion Hawkins out of the backfield, Quadre Olesen, guys that we haven't seen a whole lot of the last couple years. I'm looking forward to seeing these guys in the preseason, seeing these guys, in full pads, seeing what these guys can do in the preseason and in the game setting. But with that being said, this been your boy Jew. You guys let me know what you think of the video. Like I said, there's definitely a new sheriff in town. I'm loving what I'm seeing out of Arthur Smith. He looks like one of those guys that's not playing any games, just cutting Sterling Hofrichter. It looks like he's holding everybody accountable. He has these guys out there running laps and things of that nature when they make errors. And he's a guy that's not playing games. He's out there looking to get production out of these guys and looking to put these guys in positions to win. And that's what I'm loving from what I'm hearing so far out of a lot of these guys in training camp that have had interviews. Today, Calvin Ridley had an interview, and he basically stated He's not so much worried about his numbers, but he's worried about winning, how he can help this team win. That's what I'm hearing out of a lot of the veterans and a lot of the rookie guys that have come in. They seem like everybody is on the same page with this team, and they just want to win. At the end of the day, they don't care about numbers. They don't care about stats. They just want to win games. Matt Ryan said he's looking forward to, helping the team win in any way possible. Calvin Ridley said the same thing today in his press conference, that he wants to win games. Calvin Ridley, coming from Alabama, is a guy that's used to winning. And since he's came into the NFL, he hasn't been in the playoffs. He hasn't been able to win so far with being with our Atlanta Falcons. So he's definitely a player that's hungry, looking to take over that number one wide receiver spot. And he's a guy that's hungry to get into the playoffs for the first time and prove that he's one of the elite wide receivers in this game and one of the elite football players in this league. But with that being said, this been your boy Jew. I'll holler at you guys in the next video. As always, Falcons Nation, please hit that like, hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate each and every one of you guys. Like I said, I am on the road to 2,000 subscribers, but I'll have a lot more content coming for you guys as training camp continues. But I'm super excited as we get closer to the first preseason game. Also, tune in with me tomorrow night for What's the Word Dirty Bird. We also will be talking about training camp so far. We'll be doing live Q&A session as always. So join me tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I may also have someone joining me tomorrow night, maybe a special guest joining me tomorrow night. But with that being said, this be your boy Jew. As always, Falcons Nation, rise up. Peace.